Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. We'd also like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi, which we have amended to include Gary Lineker's sacking by the BBC. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. It is public knowledge that Christian was married to Beverly when he met Jerry, and they started conducting an illicit affair. The affair eventually led to the breakdown of his first marriage while Beverly was pregnant, and the couple separated months after their daughter was born in October 2013. Christian and Jerry announced their engagement just months after he separated from Beverly. His family, who had sided with Beverly, rejected his and Jerry's relationship, to the point that they became estranged and did not attend his second wedding, which took place just over a year after he and Beverly had separated. So, this was the first time that he was rejected by his own family, and as we will show in this video, it wasn't going to be the last time. This is a man who is so toxic that he has been rejected by his own family not once, but twice, and there are possibly more rejections to come. Of course, it is well known that he carried his toxicity into Formula One as Red Bull became the villain of the sport. He was in the forefront of the toxicity that Red Bull injected into the sport as they tried to smear Sir Lewis and Mercedes at every opportunity. But we all know he was just the mouthpiece of Dietrich Mateschitz, the 49% minority shareholder of Red Bull, the energy drinks company, who used his immense wealth to sponsor many sporting interests including the Formula One team. Dietrich and his kitchen cabinet made up of Helmut Marko and Jos Verstappen were actively pushing the toxicity from the sidelines as they pressured F1 to accede to Verstappen Jr.'s overly aggressive driving style. As team principal, Christian had the highest public profile and he was usually the one in the forefront of gaslighting Max's illegal driving, while the others formed a secondary line of defense or attack depending on how you look at it. Christian went on to become as toxic to the sport and the public as he was to his parents and Beverly, so no surprise there, eh? He was the one who was in the forefront of the Abu Dhabi robbery in 2021 that made the sport a byword for corruption, as they brazenly suborned Michael Masi to rig the finale to deprive Sir Lewis of a record-breaking 8th title and gift Max the first of his fake titles. Not to be deterred, he and Red Bull continued poisoning the sport, and the toxicity got so bad that they were roundly booed at races all over the world, to the point that he and Max were also roundly booed at the inaugural launch event at the start of this season. Given that the event had been introduced to help promote the sport to a wider audience, you can imagine how this went down with the organizers, who had to come out to plead for the booing to stop. The year before that, Christian had single-handedly plumbed even lower depths as his attempt to acquire a new mistress to replace the one that he had married became public, and Formula One also became the byword for sexual harassment in the workplace. Unsurprisingly or surprisingly depending on how you look at it, he became too toxic for even the toxicity-tolerant Red Bull. It is an open secret that in the wake of the Fiona-Hewitson sex scandal, Mark Mateschitz, who had inherited his father's minority Red Bull shareholding, wanted Christian out. Mark had inherited the shares after his dad died in October 2022. It was also rumored that Verstappen Sr. was in some sort of close relationship with Fiona, so it is no surprise that he came out to demand Christian's sacking in the wake of the scandal. It is also not surprising that Helmut was amongst those calling for Christian's exit. Furthermore, as members of Dietrich's kitchen cabinet, it was to be expected that Helmut and Jos would not have appreciated Christian's attempt to grab power following the death of his boss. Anybody who knows anything about the politics of power will know that the real powers behind the throne will always look down on the gopher no matter what. So, the Verstappens and Marko saw Horner as a jumped-up gopher who was punching above his weight when he made his power grab. That basically was the setup in Red Bull, with Marco and the Verstappens on one side, and Christian on the other. Like all toadies, Christian had sidled up to Fionahewitson, who was the head of the Hewitson family, who held the 51% majority shares in Red Bull. Fionah reportedly saw him as his foster son and apparently declined to support Mark's request to fire him in the wake of the sex scandal. However, now that he has been fired, we can conclude that his foster father has rejected him much in the same way that his biological did, after he cheated on his wife. So, his biological father rejected him after he left his pregnant first wife for his mistress, and his foster father rejected him after his disastrous attempt to acquire another mistress to fill the position vacated by the mistress that became the wife. Interestingly, at the time he left Beverly for Jerry, she had the higher public profile and was richer. One can only speculate on how things would have turned out if Fionah had been richer or more famous. Never mind that, the extent that Fionah had to go to turn his back on his foster son is particularly telling. When Red Bull was founded, the shares were reportedly split 49% each for Fionah and Dietrich, with Fionah as Fionah's eldest son holding 2%. After Fionah's death, the 49% was inherited by the Hewitson family, and the Hewitson 51% bloc refused to sign off on Mark's request to sack Christian. Well, lo and behold, in May this year, Fionah transferred his personal 2% stake in Red Bull to a trust in Geneva. It would appear that this factored into the board-level decision to oust or retain Christian, who was subsequently sacked 2 months later in July, and paid off another 2 months later in September. Well, it should not come as a surprise that someone so toxic as Christian has a history of being rejected by both his biological and foster parents. So, should it come as a surprise to see evidence that suggests that he is so toxic that he has now been rejected by his first child, Beverly's daughter? Let us know in the comments what you think of the evidence that we have uncovered that possibly suggests so. On a Christian Horner Wikipedia page that is relatively flattering or glosses over his sexual indiscretions, he is listed as having 2 children, namely the one he and Jerry had together, and hers from a previous relationship before they got together. His first and oldest child is noticeably missing. Why is that? Sadly, her mother passed away in June this year after losing a battle with eye cancer. What kind of support was he able to give his daughter, while her mother was battling cancer and in the closing stages of her life, while he himself was battling to save his career? Why would a pro-Christian Wikipedia page that lists his stepdaughter not list her? He was clearly too toxic for his biological parents, too toxic for his foster parents, and too toxic for even a toxic team like Red Bull. What are the chances that he will be deemed to be too toxic for his first wife's daughter, or his second wife, come to that? With $100 million to burn, how long will it be before he starts soiling the loins of a local wench or an Instagram babe? Toxic is as toxic does. In our next video, we will set out why we believe he has been cast out of the F1 paddock for the foreseeable future. Forza Ferrari.